Eric Crocker's eardrums out. You know what I'm saying? You know, we always do this on game day, Friday before game. We got the We Ready coming up. And you know, I noticed at Levi Stadium last Sunday, Spadoni, it had this blaring right before the opening kickoff. Right before the opening kickoff. And I'm thinking, there's somebody down at the Niners listening to the morning roast. They know what's happening with the We Ready. They know what's going on here. Time to beat up on the Brownies on Sunday. Let's go. 888-957-9570. Roasters, I want to hear from you. Eric Crocker, you know who he is. He's a factor. Locked On 49ers podcast. Brian Peacock, he knows his football. I can't wait to talk about the secondary with him, his defense of the Cleveland Browns, Brock Purdy, and the comments on the Philadelphia Eagles. We got Croc Time. Croc Time's got the earbuds in. He's chilling. Oh, there he is. He's got the Niner hat on. He's got the swag, man. He's in a new backdrop. Crocker, where you staying in the mansion, man? Where you living these days?
Nah. Just in the living room. This is my wife's doing with the designing and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good call, man. You know, I got
to stay out of that and just kind of let her do her thing.
Happy wife, happy life.
Happy wife, happy life. I know all about that life, man. Just you question where the pillows are at, and they get on you, and it's a 15-minute conversation. I'm just trying to move on with my day, man. I'll just ask the question. You're a smart man, Crocker. You're a smart man, which is why we love having you on. Niners and Browns. Obviously, everybody's talking about Brock Purdy. We'll get to him in just a second. But I love talking secondary with you because you know your DBs well. You coach it. You played it. And this Cleveland Browns secondary is very, very intriguing. I love this matchup between Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, the physicality of these three guys against the physicality of this Browns secondary. Is this Browns secondary the real deal? Are they going to cause some problems in the pass game for the 49ers?
Man, they got some guys back there that'll challenge you, and when you look at kind of the way they built that secondary, they got a couple guys who were ranked really high on just kind of my pre-draft rankings and whatnot. Denzel Ward thought he was CB1 in his class. I think Jair Alexander was in that class as well. Terrific job being able to get him, utilize him, a smaller guy, but he plays big, scrappy, super athletic, tough guy. He's kind of more famous for that big hit, and the announcer was like, barbecue chicken, I don't know if y'all remember that, but anyway, smack the guy, for a guy that's 5'11", 180, he also brings that physicality. You got Greg Newsome. He was CB2 in the class for me when he was coming out, and I was in a class with J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, and we've seen how good really both of those guys have been, especially Horn when he's healthy. But, man, and then on the back end, man, you got Juan Thornhill.
Yeah, I like
He's
him.
on his second team now.
Yep.
But he's a guy that I love coming out of college, coming out of Virginia.
Yep.
A lot of versatility, a lot of ball skills. So Emerson is the other corner I think the 49ers may be able to take advantage of, but they're all definitely playing at a very high level. And when you have a pass rush like they do with guys like Myles Garrett down there, coming off the edge, I think it makes it a little bit easier for the guys on the back end.
Yeah, this is going to be a stiffer challenge for this offense to try to move the ball down the field against this Browns defense because of all the different things Jim Schwartz does as a D coordinator. I know everybody's blowing up that 8-1 record against Shanahan, but there's context to it. Shanahan's been around, different personnel. He hasn't had personnel like this with McCaffrey, Deebo, and Ayuk. But with that pass rush, the secondary is able to play a little bit more aggressively, right? Man-to-man defense that they'd like to do. Jim Schwartz, they're going to cause some problems here. Is this going to be the game where the Niners don't score 30?
I keep waiting for that game, and I thought maybe it would be last week playing against Dallas Cowboys, having Michael Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and you got LVE at that second level with the linebackers, and you got Stephon Gilmore, and I'm like, okay, number 2 defense in the NFL, they're going to really challenge the 49ers. It did not happen from the jump, so I'm kind of giving up on thinking that teams will really challenge the 49ers to the extent that they'll just really slow them down or stop them from scoring 30. It's one of those things where I kind of have to see it to believe it. I would say if the Browns had any chance of really slowing down the 49ers offense, it might be due more to the weather as opposed to being able to just stop them defensively for an entire game. They'll get some stops. They might get some turnovers, man. You go back and watch the Cincinnati Bengals and Cleveland Browns game and how they just harassed Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Boyd. I mean, shut those dudes down. So it's a very talented group. But the 49ers, they're not just going to line up and say, hey, we're going to line up our guy is better than your guy, and we're going to throw the ball down the field. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan does a really good job of putting guys in advantageous situations to where it's not about Denzel Ward versus Deebo Samuel. It's about Deebo Samuel versus your scheme. And that comes down more to Schwartz, as you kind of mentioned before. But I think Kyle Shanahan is going to be up to the challenge, and he has a lot of weapons to really do it.
So outside of Taylor Swift, and we're talking to Eric Crocker here, former NFL DB, Locked On 49ers podcast. Outside of Taylor Swift, Brock Purdy, biggest story in the NFL, Eric. He says he can get to another level. What? I know he hasn't even played a full regular season. This guy's playing like an MVP right now. What does that another level for Brock Purdy look like?
Hell, I don't know. It's been great. You know, I think from the physical limitations, right? Like those are always going to be there. So playing on a different level because maybe I can start to use my legs more, or I can make more power throws or explosive throws. That's not going to be his game. But maybe from a mental standpoint, just truly understanding pre-snap, post-snap, you know, where to go with the ball. There could be plays that he's looking at on film where it's like, you know what, I left this play on the field. You know, maybe I threw a 8-yard pass when really I could have hit this 20-banger or something like that where it could have really hit a defense over the head. So whatever it is that he thinks that he can take to another level, I think it's things that we won't even truly be able to notice unless we understand or in the meeting rooms and know where he's supposed to go with a read. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. He's played terrific. He's been super efficient. He's taking care of the ball, put it on harm's way a couple of times against the Giants early on. But outside of that, I think handling pressure, talk about the Giants game, a team that blitzed him 84% of his dropbacks. That didn't work. Going against the Dallas Cowboys, you got Michael Parsons, Lawrence, those guys. That didn't work. He might be the only person that can stop him at this point. I mean, I don't know what to do. I'm out of answers for these opposing defenses that have to go up against him because he's handled everything extremely well.
No, he's passing all the tests, Crocker. We're talking to Crocky here, Eric Crocker, Locked On 49ers podcast. We love him on the roast. Purdy 5-0 last year, 5-0 this year, won the playoff games and then got hurt against Philadelphia. But I want to move on to McCaffrey because a lot of fans, you know, they're always worried about workloads. And we had a question today. And it was, look, I went to journalism school. All questions are good questions. I'm not going to say a dumb question, but one guy was like, you know, maybe you should rest Purdy this week for Sam Darnold. I'm like, hey, well.
No, it was the dumbest take of all time. It was a horrible take.
The sports radio, Crocker, you know what time it is. Yeah, it was wild, right? But Christian McCaffrey, it leads me to Christian McCaffrey because everybody's so worried about his workload. And me personally, I'm like, man, I don't want this guy to leave the field because of all the matchup problems he causes here. Are you concerned as a former player? Do players even think about workloads and usage rates and all that stuff? Because McCaffrey is running the ball and he has the most carries in the league so far.
You know, I think it comes down to Kyle Shanahan, and we've seen how he is with his players when he has a guy who knows he wants to utilize them a certain way. You know, you kind of go back to, 2021, Elijah Mitchell's rookie year, and Elijah Mitchell was coming in with a banged-up knee, banged-up rib, broken finger, coming off an injury. Had other running backs, you know, healthy and available in that game. And Kyle said, now, even though we're up like 3 scores on the Rams on primetime TV, we're going to continue to run the ball with Elijah Mitchell. And he carried the ball 27 times. So I don't think Kyle Shanahan really cares about workload. I think he just wants to get the job done with whoever he can count on getting that job done. Right now, obviously, it's Christian McCaffrey, and we understand all the different things that he does to really help this offense. And not just himself, right, with his ability, you know, the running, his contact balance, picking up yardage. And obviously, last game, I think it was a little bit more on the shorter yardage situation or shortage yard. I think it was averaging like 2-point-something yards per carry. Like, it wasn't great. But even then, he still affects the game in so many different ways, whether it's a guy motioning and then the defense looking at Christian McCaffrey. So even at a game where he's not rushing his best, he's still affecting the game at multiple levels. And there's not a lot of guys in the NFL that have that type of impact on the game. So you are better with him in there, but you would like to see them at times, hey, man, spill a guy like Elijah Mitchell, who, I know, obviously he's hurt right now. He can
Jordan Mason,
healthy, but get Jordan Mason in there. Get Ty Davis Price in there. And, you know, if there's 25 carries in the game, I would like to at least have those guys get 7 of those carries and McCaffrey get the other 18 and then contribute however he's going to contribute in the passing game.
So shifting over to the 49ers defense, what did you make of the Niners trading for Randy Gregory, and what kind of impact do you think he's going to have on this team going forward?
Man, I loved it, man. I loved it. I've kind of been looking at this situation with Drake Jackson, and if you kind of go back historically in drafts, you don't really find a lot of great edge rushers outside of the first round. You might find one at the top of the second round, but it's rare. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot in the edge rushers. I think the 49ers, because you have Nick Bosa, and, even last year he played so well, defensive player of the year, you expect, like, oh, man, Drake Jackson, like, that's the guy they drafted. He's going to be so good. It's like, hold on. He was, like, the last pick in the second round, so typically edge rushers that last that long, they're not great. I mean, you can look at Max Crosby. He's kind of an anomaly when it comes to edge rushers being taken a little bit later. I keep talking about DeMarcus Lawrence on the Dallas Cowboys. He was taken at the top of the second round. But typically, outside that first round, you don't really see these edge rushers that are super impactful. So when you have an opportunity to go and help him out, right, and maybe not have to utilize him as much, I think they've even had Cleveland Farrell playing on the field more than Drake Jackson, right? Okay, who's going to be that other dynamic pass rusher? And you go and get a guy like Randy Gregory, and he hasn't been a high sack guy, but he's definitely a high impact guy. And he was a guy that really caused fits against the 49ers when the 49ers played the Cowboys in the playoffs. Now, he also caused fits for the Cowboys. He had two big bonehead abilities. One where he held, I want to say it was like Daniel Brunskill. He just kind of like tackled him to the ground. I think he punched Deebo Samuel in the helmet one time. So can you eliminate the bonehead stuff that can cause you to lose games? So I think those things really hurt the Cowboys in that playoff game. But as far as the talent and having him opposite Nick Bosa for a majority of the snaps, I think that's a big-time win for the 49ers.
Yeah, pairing him with Chris Kosaric, one of the best defensive line coaches in all of football. He's going to get the best out of him, as you mentioned, Crocky. I like the Randy Gregory pickup here. I do worry about Frank Clark. Where is he going to end up? Back in Kansas City? Or is he going to go to one of these big boy teams, Buffalo? That's going to be very intriguing because they all are loading up after looking at what the 49ers have done so far. This may be a silly question, but to you, what is the better unit right now? Because under Kyle Shanahan, it's always been led by the defense. And coming into training camp, I think we talked about this. Maybe we didn't. But I thought maybe this is the year at times the offense can pick up the defense. Because if there's one area of weakness, maybe it's slot corner with Isaiah Oliver. Gordon gets fast twitch guys, quick guys coming in the slot like Turpin did last week in that Cowboys game. What is the better unit right now? Is it the offense or the defense?
Oh, man. I remember that was a huge question. That's definitely for me heading into the season. Hey, man, if the defense regresses a little bit, can the offense kind of pick up that slack? And we haven't quite seen it to that extent.
Right. And
I don't think the defense has regressed to the extent I maybe could have potentially seen a drop off with them. Maybe they're not the number one defense. They're right up there, right? But when you watch them, it doesn't feel like it's as good as last season. Maybe they're still top 5, though, right? So that's still a good defense. The offense is better. Like, this is the best 49ers offense I've seen since, man.
98?
Mid-90s.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I was thinking.
98, 97. And those were terrific teams with, Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, J.J. Stokes, Garrison Hurst, Steve Young. Like, those were terrific teams with really good offenses. I think this offense has been as efficient, if not even more efficient or better than some of those teams that were really kind of loaded up. So, Terry Kirby, he was another dude back in the day. Yeah. But man, like it's been fun watching this offense. And again, I don't want to crown them and say they're just better than like the '94 offense or some of those mid '90s teams. You got to kind of wait to see how it all plays out. But right now, as it stands, I mean, they're through 5 games, they've done things that no other 49ers team has done. In the history of the team, no team has scored. It was 4. At first, it was 4 straight games to start the season of over 30 points. That never happened. Now it's 5 straight. And then the 5th one was 42 points against the number 2 defense, right? Yep. Now they're going to Cleveland, and that's going to be a big-time challenge. But, I mean, again, they're clicking on all cylinders. The quarterback, who is kind of, you got Kyle Shanahan playing puppet master, but the quarterback is making every throw that you need him to make, down the field, making the right decisions, not turning the ball over. I mean, I haven't really seen an offense like this by the 49ers in a lot of years. So I think this is the first year in a long time you could definitely say, I think this offense is better than the defense right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And they're scoring on all these opening drives, 7-7, 3-7-7. The defense is not allowing points. So they're setting the tone early and playing downhill, not uphill, trying to come from behind here. Last one for you, Croc, because we do appreciate the time. We know you're a busy man. I sent out a tweet yesterday that I didn't think nothing of it. I just said, look, man, until the Niners beat Philly, I still have the Eagles as the top dog in the NFC. Being the best team in Week 6 does nothing for me. I've seen the Niners be great in October and November and flame out in the playoffs. We've all been there before. But until the rubber meets the road December 3rd, we're going to find out who the best team is in the NFC. But I'm just going based off of what Philly did last year and what they brought back. And I know they're not clicking yet they're 5-0. Do you subscribe to that as a former player, saying to be the man, you have to beat the man, and right now that man is Philadelphia?
You for sure got to beat the man, right? Like, that was a big thing for the Dallas Cowboys, even though now you find out they didn't really take it personal until they saw a T-shirt. Now they want to take it personal. A little weird. I don't know if I would take it personal after two butt kickers in the playoffs. But with the 49ers, you definitely you want that game, right? Like, you want that game. It might mean more for the 49ers than it does for Philadelphia, but there's been a lot of chatter throughout the offseason. You want to go into that game and you want to kick their butt. Mm-hmm. And, I've talked about it. Really, you can mention kind of it's crazy calling them, having them saying that they're having a slower start because they're undefeated like the 49ers are, but obviously some of their games have been a lot closer. It reminds me a lot of like the Golden State Warriors. Like, these regular season games for these two teams, it doesn't really matter a whole lot, right? Like, the thing that matters most is just, getting everything together, continuing to build that continuity. But at the end of the day, you know who the two best teams are in the NFL.
Right.
It is the 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. So everything for them is gearing up towards that week, 13 game, whatever it is. All right. And then, all right, when you see each other in the postseason, how is it going to go down? Mm-hmm. But everything else, a slow start for Philly and stuff like that, man, I don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about the power rankings. We know who the two best teams are in the NFL.
I'm with you, Crocker. And they still have that defensive line and offensive line that wins in January and February. And don't sleep on the Detroit Lions because they're good in the trenches as well. And we see how football plays out. It's one in the trenches. You got to give the quarterback time. You got to be able to run the ball, and you got to get after that quarterback. And both teams can do that very, very well. Can't wait for that matchup. But first, the Niners got to handle business Sunday against the Cleveland Browns, which I expect them to do against P.J. Walker and company. Crocker, man, always a good time with you on the Morning Roast. Thanks for always